Hi, everyone. We are so glad that you are joining us. We have people here from all over the country, whether you're joining us live or you're going to access the recordings later. We are so excited to have you here for our Supporting Math Intervention through Inclusion and Differentiation. We are a company called All Learners Network, and we are here to create a network of educators who are looking to include every single child in quality math learning opportunities. And we are excited to host this free virtual conference. Like I said, you might be accessing it live or you might be here to watch the recordings. And we're hoping we can share a little bit of information with you that can support your practice, that can ensure your students see themselves as the capable mathematicians that they are. In order to kick off this awesome event, I would like to welcome Dr. Nicki Newton. Dr. Nicki Newton is here joining us. She just wrote, and it is about to be, you can actually pre-order it right now, called Accelerating K-8 Math Instruction. Dr. Nicki is incredible. If you don't know anything about her yet, she is an education consultant who works with schools and districts around the country and Canada on K-8 math curriculum. She has taught elementary school, middle school, and graduate school. Dr. Nicki has an Ed.M. and an Ed.D. from Teachers College Columbia University. She is greatly interested in teaching and learning practices around the world and has researched education in Denmark, Guatemala, and India. She has written several books, including Guided Math, Math Workshop, and Math Running Records. She is currently a part of the curriculum team for the new McGraw-Hill Reveal Math series. Her latest book, which is featured here, is about accelerating math in K-8 classrooms, and that's what she's going to be talking with us about today. She is presently writing and researching a book about high-dosage tutoring. She enjoys visiting schools and working with administrators, teachers, and students in their classrooms face-to-face and virtually. And without further ado, here is Dr. Nicki Newton. Thanks for joining us today.
So when we talk about math intervention, the conversations lately have been around the 4 recommendations from the Department of Ed, as well as, and then pushed out to school districts across the country. There are 4 recommendations for learning recovery. And these are those 4. One is in-school acceleration. One is high quality, or what people call high dosage, or what other people call high impact tutoring. Another one is before, after, or weekend school. And the final one is summer learning and enrichment. So those are the 4 recommendations. I'm going to just try to get rid of this thing that's in the way. Those are the 4 recommendations for learning recovery. So given that, I'm going to focus today on acceleration. I'm really excited about acceleration. I think it just totally confuses everybody because they've repurposed the term. And so they've taken the term acceleration, which most people associated with taking a 5th grader and teaching them 7th grade math, or taking a 9th grader and teaching them 11th grade math. That's traditionally what we've thought of as acceleration. But now they have repurposed the term acceleration to mean that we're going to teach all kids on grade level. So acceleration is a paradigm shift. It moves us away from schlepping students through the fields of everything that they don't know, and instead targets interventions that serve as a footbridge into the right now. And I think that's really a big piece of it. Acceleration is a way of saying everybody is invited to the party, right? Rather than, there was a book written in 2014 on acceleration. And so this scholar was very forward thinking at the time they wrote it on acceleration. It's a general book on acceleration. And Rollins said this: rather than build students' academic futures, remediation pounds away at the past. And we spend significant amounts of time teaching in reverse. And then we ask, why aren't they caught up? I love that phrase. We teach significant amounts of time in reverse and then ask, why aren't they caught up? So acceleration says, let's catch them up, right? And so I made a quick video that I want us to watch on acceleration. So those are some of the big takeaways around acceleration when we are thinking of what is acceleration, what does it do? Those are big key points. And we are going to, hold on. It's not letting me back into my PowerPoint. So there we go. All right, so those are the big points that I want to talk about today. Looking at progress monitoring, looking at vocabulary, which is a big part of it. So I made a chart, and it's the difference between remediation and acceleration, because really what has happened is we're supposed to be shifting the paradigm of math intervention from one of remediation to one of acceleration. So we're shifting that paradigm. And I will give you an example. My friend teaches 5th grade, and she was telling me, she goes, Nicki, I'm teaching 5th grade and we're learning, this was last year, this last spring. She goes, we're learning how to multiply fractions. And she says, but my kids, when they go to intervention, they're learning like 2nd grade standards. They're learning like how to add and subtract 2-digit numbers. And it has nothing to do with what we're doing in class. It doesn't help at all. And I said, that's because you guys are using a remediation model rather than an acceleration model. If you were using an acceleration model, when the kids went to intervention, they would be learning the standards that helped them access the grade level curriculum that you are currently working on. And she was like, oh, I was like, that is why it is really important to be accelerating and not remediating. I'm sorry, I did I'm trying to hide the panel, but it won't hide. And so it just keeps popping up. And so we're looking at remediation and we're looking at acceleration. And I made a chart. So remediation is like reviewing content and skills from prior grades, not much emphasis on the vocabulary. Rarely are connections made to real life. Curiosity isn't provoked. The math isn't relevant to what the kids need to know in the current grade. And remediation is about filling in gaps and fixing everything. And it's often unconnected with the current grade level. And you just kind of reteach everything from prior years and try to close all the gaps. Acceleration is a completely different thing. Acceleration is about teaching all students on grade level while specifically connecting back to targeted prior standards to scaffold success with the new ones, the present, this week, what we're learning. It's clearly defined success criteria, and there's rich grade level experiences so that kids can function in class with the material that they are learning. It is a bridge back to specific targeted prior standards. And we introduce and work effectively with vocabulary. We revisit basic skills in the context of how they will help us, right, with the current grade level standards. We never teach skills in isolation. It's a strategic targeted addressing of prior knowledge and skills. So it's this target reteaching of prior standards for individual groups or the whole class that bridge success to the current grade level standards. In remediation, students do the work and it's graded and given back. And unfortunately, a lot of it is kind of drill and kill and, boredom and frustration and dismay. The pacing is often slow. It's worksheets, computer games, and it's trying to cover everything that the kids didn't learn before. Acceleration is ongoing formative assessment, progress monitoring, student reflection, teacher feedback, concrete, pictorial, and abstract explorations. It's fast-paced, it's hands-on, it's rigorous, and the goal is to stay current with the grade level standards. Right. And also another big piece when we're talking about acceleration, this is all part of the bigger umbrella, of the 8 elements of math intervention. Affect. When you are accelerating, you are consciously aware of the affect, the disposition, the self-efficacy, and the confidence of students and the role that is playing in teaching and learning. Students are experiencing success. You are setting up opportunities for small wins, and they have access to the work in the core class, right? Whereas in remediation, we don't really talk a lot about how are they feeling about this, what is their confidence level, and it's kind of drags and it's slow and it's not much connected to the real class. Remediation is reteaching everything that kids didn't know in the prior grades and holding them hostage to vocabulary, concepts, and skills from 2 to 3 or more grades below the grade that they're operating on. And students aren't doing lessons that even connect to the new lesson. Whereas acceleration, it's not just a quick pre-teach. Acceleration is an instructional approach to teach students on grade level who are struggling in mathematics. The activities are unique to the lesson. They are not a repeat of what they're going to then do in class. Rollins refers to it as the core and the more. The core content and the supplemental learning and support that are provided by acceleration. I love that phrase, the core and the more. And so when we're talking about the benefits of acceleration, we look at all students are taught grade level content, that a student achievement goes up and that students become confident, competent, and motivated, right? So this is an example. I was talking about traces like before COVID. I had really started doing this work. And at the time I was in Alabama when I started doing the work at the middle school on traces, because I was like, the 5th grade division problem is not a 5th grade division problem. The 5th grade division problem is a 3rd grade problem and a 4th grade problem. It's manifesting in 5th grade in this way. But the only way we're going to address this is if we do a trace back to where the issues are so that we can do a direct trace and then teach up into the grade level standard. So throughout the book, I do a bunch of these traces. And who does, a great digital trace is Achieve the Core, where you can go and push on a standard and it'll trace back all of what came before that standard, and it'll also trace up what comes next. But this is like a paper and pencil trace. So if we're looking at 6th grade division, we can go back. Well, what did they do in 5th grade? Well, what did they do in 4th grade? Well, what did they do in 3rd grade? We're looking back, we're doing a trace in division. So you trace whatever you're trying to teach at the grade level so that when you then are doing the intervention, you know where to fit in, right? And so this looks at what happened at each of those grade levels and then where is the gap and how do I fill that? Very, very precise. Acceleration is the concept and process of teaching grade level material, weaving in stopping points periodically to address a small missing piece in fundamental understanding before popping back up to the original skill. This concept is intended to overcome the vicious circle of reviewing below grade level concepts with struggling learners repeatedly, right, ad nauseum, never giving them the opportunity to demonstrate grade level mastery. So when we are talking about acceleration, and I will keep saying this, it is really about getting all kids at the table. We want all kids to have access to the party, a seat at the table. One of the biggest pieces of acceleration is this idea of prior knowledge. Now, everybody gives lip service to it. Everybody says, oh, prior knowledge, you know, you need it and it's important. But you must activate it in very concrete ways. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Tapping into prior knowledge is an asset-based approach to math intervention. Tapping into prior knowledge says all kids know some things, right? And so it is important, it is essential, it is absolutely necessary that we tap into prior knowledge. Acceleration is about making prior knowledge usable. It's really that simple. Acceleration is like using a jumper cable connected to a battery to start the engine of learning. So when we talk about prior knowledge, Law of 2019 said that there's different kinds. There's correct prior knowledge that students can actually use. There's inactive prior knowledge that we have to tap into. There's insufficient where they don't have enough to use it. There's inappropriate where it's not the right connection. And then there's inaccurate, which is really hard to fix, but it's important that we know. So prior knowledge is all of our memories, experiences, and understandings about a topic. And it scaffolds access to the new knowledge. You know, Hattie points out that it has a very high effect size. We must tap into prior knowledge. It's an important part of the learning process. It's extremely important in mathematics because math concepts build on each other. As students are learning new knowledge, their brains try to make connections between the new and the old. And the brain wants to link and integrate the new knowledge with the prior knowledge and experiences. They're all, and Ledgren said this, and I really want to spend some time here, that they're already, speaking of the students, they're already coming with so many experiences that we can tap into. These experiences help them to create connections to the content that we want them to learn. And so I would dare say that oftentimes we get into these ruts, especially since COVID, we say, well, they don't know this and they don't know that and they don't. And so prior knowledge, if you're really believe in it and you're activating it, is shifting from saying these kids can't, these kids aren't able to, these kids don't know this thing. It's shifting that to saying these kids can, these kids know so much. I can't believe how much these kids are bringing to the table. If we're tapping into prior knowledge, we are looking for asset. As the book, there's a book recently out about assets-based mathematics out of Corman, and it's really good. One of the things I loved about it is they said that we are strength detectives. That is the role of the teacher, is to be a strength detective, to find out what your kids can do. So my thing is, the question is not do they have prior knowledge, because they do. It's do you know what they know and how they know it? So I might be saying, well, they can't add, they can't subtract, they're having so much trouble with subtraction, they don't know anything about it. But you see, kids do know a lot about subtraction. You just have to know how to tap into it. So lately with kids, I've been using a lot of pictures and doing visual number talks with them. When I put this picture up on the board and I say to kids, what is this? And I've done this with hundreds of kids. I've never had a kid once tell me, I don't know. I don't know anything about what's going on there. I know nothing. I'm at a loss here. I've never had a kid do that. And when I present this, I give them whiteboards and I say, oh my, look at this picture. What's happening in this picture? Can you tell your partner a story? And everybody begins to talk. Everybody has a story. Everybody knows what's happening here. And then I ask them to tell their story. And then I say, well, could we put some numbers? What are the numbers? Oh, there was 6 donuts. So let's write that down. And somebody took one away. Well, let's write that down. Well, now how many are there? There's 5 left. Kids have prior knowledge. The question is, do you have the knowledge to tap in to their prior knowledge? So I'm going to show you something else I've been doing with them. I love this one. This is 2nd grade problem. Because, 2nd grade, you've got to add 2 4-digit numbers, and it's just an impossible task. When you put all those numbers up there, the kids are like, what? But you see, kids know a lot about adding 4-digit numbers or 4 2-digit numbers. You just have to know how to put it up there. You put it up there disguised as a sea star. These are sea stars. They have 22 legs each. And if I ask the kids how many legs does 4 sea stars have, they all can tell me. They have prior knowledge. They know how to add. They figure it out different ways. Right? And I can take this and make it a 4th grade problem for multiplying a single digit by a double digit. And they all can figure it out. See, that's what acceleration does. It's the footbridge that takes us from what they know to what they need to know. So this right here is a way for kids to enter into a discussion. And then I can present the algorithm. But I just want to know, can they think? That's what I'm asking, not for an answer, but can you think? And then I will go to classrooms and I will say, oh, look at this. And they're all looking and wondering, what are these? I say, they're sea stars. And they have 22 legs. Who can tell me a multiplication sentence? Who can tell me a division sentence? Who can tell me both? And they all have ways of doing it. They all can figure it out. Some people draw, some people use numbers, some people make repeated addition. They do all kinds of things. But kids have knowledge. I've been doing this a lot with the 4th graders, because in 4th grade, you have to do all kinds of things with fractions. You have to multiply them, you have to add them, you have to subtract them. And kids always want to mess with denominators when they shouldn't be messing with denominators. So I just put this up there and I say, well, what is this? They go, well, that's 1.5 plus 1.5. See, if I put the numbers, it gets scary. But if I tap into their prior knowledge, what they know about fractions in real life, these are apples. Everybody has seen one. This is an apple and a half. Everybody knows what that is. They automatically can say, oh, well, that's one. There's
You're not
2.
gonna be friendly. You're gonna be friendly?
There. So kids can add fractions with like denominators and not get confused. I'm showing, and I've been doing this a lot. I've been doing it with hundreds of kids. And you know what? They get it. They look at this. And you know what? When I put the expression up there first, they get totally confused. I've been doing this with kids that haven't even gotten to the fraction unit. And I said, oh, I just want to talk about what we see. They're like, oh, we have 4 halves. We have 4 groups of a half. We have 4 times a half. It's 4 times a half. And everybody knows, because kids know what apples are. I really believe we have got to find ways to tap into lived experiences. An apple is a lived experience. So is this. So is a pizza. So when I put this up there, the kids are like, oh, okay, there's 8/8, and they took away 2/8, and now there's 6/8 left. I never taught them any kind of algorithm to do it. We're just talking, we're just thinking. And that is the way that we segue. That is the footbridge that we are taking from what we know to what we want to learn. See, this is prior knowledge. So you have to think about, what are the ways that I am tapping in to the knowledge that I know all my kids have. We get hung up on, well, they don't know fractions. They don't know anything about fractions. They act like they don't remember anything that they learned in the grades before. No, that's not true. Kids know lots of things about fractions. They see and use them quite often in their life. The question is, do you know how to tap into what they know, right? So this problem I show to kids all the time, and it takes them out. I wrote this math running record that I've been giving the kids around the country. This is one of the problems they all miss. They get to this problem and they freeze. And I don't say, oh, well, this is the algorithm. This is what, I don't do any of that. I say, well, what if this was money? And do you know that about 70 to 80% of the kids can then solve the problem? The minute I say, but what if this was money? They go, oh, well, it's $4 and take away a quarter. They can figure that because they have prior knowledge. I am tired of people going around saying that our kids don't have prior knowledge. They do. The question is, do you know how to tap into it? That's the real question, right? And so in acceleration, we are trying to tap into prior knowledge. Now, maybe they don't have academic, and I put that academic prior knowledge, but do they have lived experience prior knowledge? Of course they do. Do they have a way to access the content? Of course they do. Do you know how to tap in to what they know? Well, I don't know. I can't speak for you. We've got to learn, though, if we are going to move our kids forward. So acceleration is about prioritizing specific prior knowledge that lends itself to the grade level standard. And this is just a graphic of, how do we assess where kids are in terms of prior knowledge, and lots of different ways to do that. And also, one of the things that in the research on prior knowledge, people will do is they will give the kids like prior knowledge cards that says, have I heard this before? Where have I seen this in real life? Is this tricky or easy for me? What do I remember about this in other grades? Have I heard these words before? Could I draw out what I think it is? Or shall we do a brainstorm about where we might see it? Doing prior knowledge mind maps with kids. Where have you ever seen something like this before? The idea of prior knowledge is so important when we're talking about acceleration. I mean, it's important in general, but in what we're talking about, math intervention, very, very important. And then having charts up, what is prior knowledge? Our brain grows every time we learn new things. We can make learning easier by connecting to the old stuff and making that very explicit to kids. Oh, we're activating some stuff you already know to learn some stuff that we have to learn now. We're going to look at how when you sit down and you eat a pizza that has 8 pieces and you eat 3 of them, what we're learning now is how to write that with numbers. But you already know about eating a pizza and taking some of the pizza. In what ways are you tapping into your kids' prior knowledge? The other thing I want to talk about is vocabulary, because vocabulary holds kids hostage. And so we really have to actively be teaching vocabulary in our acceleration lessons. Vocabulary is more than a word wall. And I love word walls. But my question always is this when I go into a classroom. Do the kids know the words on the wall? The words are very beautiful, but do the kids know the words on the wall? And are the kids using them? And is the teacher using them? Marzano points out that some of the students' gaps in disciplinary knowledge are related to vocabulary. Vocabulary gaps must be addressed. Think about the impact of vocabulary gaps with standardized tests, class conversations, mini lessons, quizzes, word problems. If you don't have the vocabulary, you don't have access to the content, because a math is a language. And if you don't know the words, you cannot speak it. It is very important, and we must take it up in a much more serious way than we have been. Rawlings points out that a poor academic vocabulary can be academically debilitating to a student. I'm going to reach way back to the year when I was born, Dale, 1965, because all the work that Beck and Kwan and Marzano and all the people that do the research on vocabulary, they all stem back to this guy. Dale said there are 4 stages of word knowledge. You never saw it, you heard it, but you don't know what it means. You recognize it in a context as having something to do with something. So you're familiar with it, but you can't really articulate it. Or you know it well and you remember it. Those are the 4 stages of word knowledge. What this has to do with math is that there's all this research, and I go into it in depth and give lots of examples in the book about assessing word knowledge before, during, and after an acceleration cycle. So this would be a pre-test. This is a framework out of the research that people use to assess kids' math vocabulary. It's called the vocabulary recognition task. It comes with a lot of tallying and grading and calculating. And I don't do all that. I just do it really kind of as a qualitative, quick assessment of, what kids know. So looking at it, we say, we're ready to, we're getting ready to learn multiplying fractions. Below you see a list of words. Put a circle around the words that you're able to read and that you are sure have something to do with fractions, and don't guess. And then you give the kids, in this particular task, you give the kids a bunch of words, and they have to circle the ones that they know have to do with whatever your topic is. And then you ask them to explain those words and pictures and describe them. So this is called the vocabulary recognition task. There's another set of scholars that I used. They do a lot of different things. I made them into emojis, but it's what I know about this word, vocabulary word now, and they give it before and after the unit. And so they give the kids the words. You see the words on the left-hand side, and then the kids just go through and they're like, smiley face, I'm familiar, but I don't really own that word, or I'm puzzled by that word. And you do it at the beginning of the cycle of intervention, and then you do it at the end of that cycle of intervention to see if their vocabulary has actually improved. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about, I want to leave some room for questions. So we're going to talk about a few more things. Lesson planning. The more ways that something is done and learned, the more memory pathways are built. This is the work research from Willis. If you have not read her book, you have got to read Willis's book on brain research. She's a neurologist who went back into the classroom to teach, and now she's just brilliant, and she makes all these connections. She says the brain research discovery is part of the reason for the current notion that stimulating the growth of more dendrites and synaptic connections is one of the best things teachers can learn to do for the brains of their students. And so this is just one of many templates where it's an acceleration learning plan where you can see it side by side. What's the current grade level standard? And what's the knowledge and skills needed? What's the prior grade level standard? And what's the knowledge and skills needed? And then I love this. It says, what will you specifically review and how will you bridge to make the connections and how will you scaffold? So students could meet this. So this is a good phrase for teachers to think of. Students could meet this new standard if they just knew, and then you're planning for that. If they just knew what vocabulary, what sentence frames, what manipulatives, what templates, right? And then how often you're going to do this in your cycle of intervention, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, how many times a week, in class, in other teachers' rooms, and who will do the math intervention and the time. So I want to say something about all of this. This parallels the research on high dosage tutoring. Ideally, you do it 2 to 3 times a week. What they find with any sort of tutoring that you're doing with kids, any sort of acceleration meetings that you're doing with kids, that 50 hours, 50 to 60 hours is the turning point. That's when you see a lot of growth. So ideally you do it 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes a session, and you have 1 to 3 kids in the intervention. Now that's not possible in many cases, so people will have more, but I'm just saying, ideally what the research has shown us is 3 times a week, in class preferably, but or in another teacher's room. And that when you're talking about high dosage tutoring, if you're doing acceleration through high dosage tutoring, you want either the teacher or you want a paid volunteer who is trained, right? Because the high dosage tutoring and the acceleration cycle, it's not just like have the kids do this work page. You're trying to get the kids to work on grade level and closing gaps in a very strategic way. And they find, if you notice at the beginning, I said in-school acceleration. It's one of the 4 points. In-school acceleration, high dosage tutoring, before and after, or weekend school, and also summer school. So the best way, right, that people have found is when you do it during the school day, because then you can get everybody you need. So some schools do like when, what I need, and then in that what I need time span, some kids get acceleration, other kids get extension. It just depends. It's what I need. Other kids, they just, like at one of my schools, they have the resource teacher is doing the acceleration lessons. She meets with she only meets with the kids that have IEPs, but she meets with them every day, and she meets with them 30 minutes a day, and she's working on acceleration. So yeah, so some, all of these things are really important to consider and think about when you're looking at your acceleration cycle. And then as you are looking at monitoring progress, I just wanted to show you, this is one of the ways to kind of record what you're doing, but to look at the weekly progress and, whether the student was there or not. And then, how are they achieving progress and what you're going to do about that. And also, what I want to point out is the student affect, because remember that one of the 8 elements of math intervention is motivation. So you're always tapping into how are they experiencing this? Are they motivated to learn this? Do they have a sense of self-efficacy around this? So you're always thinking about that as you are working on checking in on where the student is, so you can decide what to do next. So the progress monitoring piece is so important when you're thinking about acceleration. Remember, progress monitoring should be quick, simple, efficient, frequent, available in alternate formats, accommodating mini assessments, that the data is accessible immediately, and it monitors growth over time. So your progress monitoring piece, when you're planning out your acceleration, your progress monitoring piece is essential. It has to be all of these things. So I want you just to kind of look at them and think about, is it all of these things? Or is it like some sort of long drawn out test that takes forever to get the data? And then, what is the system for getting the data up there and accessible so that the teacher can use it to inform what she's doing, and that the interventionist can use it immediately to inform what they're doing? So it's got to be quick and simple, right? It's got to be immediately accessible data, right? And it's got to be frequent, because you've got to see if the intervention is working or not. And so this is just an example of, you want kids monitoring themselves, right? So you have to have structures where students can monitor their own progress. So this is just one small example. This is a fluency progression of adding within 20, but we have lots of 3rd and 4th graders that can't add within 20. So this just scaffold, because remember what the research says about intervention. Kids need small wins. It's not like, oh, you have to learn how to add within 100 today, or you have to learn how to add within 20 today. You need small wins. Add 0, add 1. Really, you add 1 first and then add 0. Count on adding within 5, adding within, and they color this as they go along in their own private fluency folder, not on the wall for everybody to see who's where. I don't believe in that. I think your private business is your private business, and it belongs in a fluency folder that you can see, and the world doesn't need to know where you're at. So, but this allows kids to monitor where they're at, and they can see their progress. People do it with, line graphs, or do it with bar graphs, or this is another visual. But there's got to be some way where kids know, what am I supposed to be learning? And am I learning that thing so I could celebrate when I do? These are other examples. These are visual priority standards. So I just pulled down 2. This is a big, huge packet for each one, but I just pulled down a couple of screenshots. Pulled down one from kinder and one from 3rd, so you could see what I did. And a lot of people make these, but what I did was I only put the priority standards. So again, here you'll see what I mean by small wins. Anybody can read this. Parents can read this, kids can read this, teachers can read this. So now kids know, like, okay, I'm learning to count to 5. When I learn to count to 5, I'll learn to count to 10. When I learn to count to 10, I'll learn to count to 20. I'm learning to write my numbers. This kindergarten standards, you can write your numbers at 20, but I'm going to learn to write my numbers at 5. When I get to 5, I'll go to 10. When I get to 10, I'll go to 20. So it has all of the visual goals, so kids can, when they get it, put a check or a happy face or whatever. And there's these little certificates that go with it. I have a website coming out next week or the week after. It's got all this stuff up there for free that you can download for every grade. And it's got the visual goals, and then it's got the certificates, and then it's got the I can statements, because you want to put those I can statements in your acceleration lessons. So kids can see right there in the lesson, this is what we're working on. A lot of people are really moving towards I am learning to. I mean, Dweck argues that in terms of mindset, that kids should say, I'm learning to, because I can, well, maybe you can and maybe you can't, but I am learning to speaks to the journey. I'm learning to add within 100. I'm learning to add fractions with unlike denominators. I am learning to do this. Speaks to the continuum. So here's a 3rd grade one. So if I'm working with 3rd graders on like the 8 or 9 standards that they have to learn for multiplication, I give them this and say, these are all the things that we're going to learn how to do. We're going to learn it a little at a time, but this is where we're going. Because if you have a roadmap, you're much more likely to get there. And if you don't know where you're going, you're likely to end up anywhere. So do kids know where they're going? Part of intervention is having kids know what the journey is and having them know if they're headed in the right direction and giving them feedback that encourages them, right? That assessment book by Stiggins, where all of the different authors write about assessment, it's one of the best books I've ever read about assessment. And they talk, and I can't remember right now the scholar that talks about, feedback that feeds forward, right? That encourages kids, because the kind of feedback we give kids can either encourage them or discourage them. And so you're wanting to give feedback that encourages kids on the journey, right? So part of acceleration is that piece. And then here's like an example. In the book, I do case studies. I do a primary, an upper elementary, and a middle school case study. And so this is just a few of those things. This is like the accelerated math lesson checklist. So I'm cycling kids through. I'm trying to get them to use, to do 1 digit by 1 digit and learning to bridge 10, so that then I can take them to 2 digit and 1 digit, bridging 10. So then I can take them to 2 digit and 2 digit, bridging 10. So that'd be a cycle of acceleration, tapping back into the 1 digit and 1 digit, leading them all the way up to 2 digit number strategies. And so this is the acceleration cycle. And so here's just like I would do something like this. We'd focus on this for a while, right? The bridging of 10 with single digits, and then the bridging of 10 with a double digit and a single digit. And then the bridging of 10 as part of a landscape of strategies that they have to know of adding within 100. So if I'm here and I'm like, they don't know any of it, I'm going to scaffold up to the strategies that are in here. And then I'll give you one more example. We're almost done. Division and fractions, what a pair, right? This is what we know. Ma, I believe it was 1999, said to us that division is the hardest operation and fractions is the hardest number to teach. So when you start dividing fractions in word problems are all hard for everybody. So you start dividing fractions in word problems, and you've got the trifecta, right? So this is an example of a trace. If I'm in 6th grade and I've got kids and I got to teach them to divide a fraction by a fraction, I will look at the trace. I want to do an exact trace down to wherever there are gaps and build up into that. And so that's what a trace will do for you. And then this is the accelerated checklist of like all of the stuff that I want to go through. I want to make sure that the vocabulary is in there. I want to make sure that I have the work mats in there. And then this is just kind of the cycle of engagement for what I would do with dividing fractions by fractions, right? That I am assessing specific prior knowledge, that I'm going back through targeted standards to teach targeted prior knowledge. I'm doing hands-on standards-based academically rigorous tasks that connect to the grade level standard, because I want all kids to have access to the party, right? And then I am infusing the discussion and the doing of the mathematics. So this is just an example of a cycle. And you might not go this fast, but this is just an example. If I was in 6th grade, I would go back to, I can divide a whole number by a unit fraction, which is the 5th grade standard. I can divide a whole number by any fraction, which is the 6th grade standard. So go back and teach a couple of days of this and then connect it. And then I can divide a unit fraction by a whole number, which is the 5th grade standard. And then I can divide any fraction by a whole number, which is the 6th grade standard. So I can connect. And then I scaffold into, I can divide a fraction by a fraction. Right. Remember, all intervention, you should be doing some sort of 10 minutes of fluency a day. And then the actual activity in working on word problems using the manipulatives and visualization. And then, so this is kind of a snapshot of through a lesson. If I'm trying to get kids to do that, I'm going to work with different models. This isn't the area model, this is a linear model. And then the number line. Right. So I want kids to be able to scaffold through that. I'm going to end with this story. This is a true story of some 5th grade boys. my friend Christine went into a 5th grade classroom, and they were learning to add decimals. And there was a set of boys who were working on just 2nd grade math, adding whole numbers. And Christine said to the teacher, well, what are they doing? And the teacher said, they don't know how to do this, so they're doing 2nd grade math. The teacher said it out loud. Christine was really embarrassed for herself, for the teacher, for the boys. So teacher Christine goes, I'm going to go and work with them. So Christine went and she sat down, and she says, what are you guys doing? They go, oh, we have to practice this. We're just, working on adding 2-digit numbers. And she goes, I think we could, let's try some stuff. So she pulled out a place value mat. She took the numbers that they had been working in with, and she made them into decimals. And she taught them how to add decimals, because it was a bridge, right, from what they were doing to what the grade level standard was. And do you know that those boys were so excited that one of them yelled out in glee to the entire class? He said, we are doing 5th grade math. We're doing it. We are doing 5th grade math. And he was so excited, Christine said, to be doing 5th grade math. Kids know when you're giving them math that is not on their grade level. They know it, and everybody else does. And I love that story because it showed the power of bridging on that footbridge, getting kids from where they are to where they need to be, because all kids need and deserve to learn on grade level. Right? So wow, we're doing it. We're doing 5th grade math. And you should be, my friends, because you are in 5th grade. So I just wanted to end with this graphic because I love this study by IES. It's the 2009 recommendations for math intervention. There's a newer one, 2021. It pertains more to kind of small group work, but this was the big kahuna that talked about just kind of the general tenets of intervention. And you'll notice that I tapped on some of this today: motivation, progress monitoring, visualization. The research says kids that visualize are 6 times more likely to solve the problem correctly. I mean, that's a pretty good time size, right? Peabody Institute out of Vanderbilt University has some really great stuff on math intervention. You should look them up. They have a really good piece on visualization. The recommendation is 10 minutes a day of fluency, basic fact fluency. Most kids that are in intervention are still kind of struggling and wrestling with some of those basic facts. Then we're always thinking about word problems. We're trying to build solid whole number sense and then bridging into rational numbers, and that it should be explicit and systematic. We should do universal screening. So I just wanted to situate this within this larger dialogue of the 8 recommendations for math intervention. I have a new website coming out. I just want to tell people. So if you're looking for intervention stuff, this is the place to be. It's going to be factfluency.playground.com. It's coming out in 2 weeks, and it's got everything you need about basic fact fluency. And so that's how you can stay in touch with me. It has been a pleasure to talk with you and to present and share some ideas. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. Somebody from the team, do you want to let me know if there was any questions that I needed to address in the chat?
Dr. Nicki, one question that came up is, when will your book be released?
It's supposed to be released March 2020. I mean, well, then it should have been released March 2023.
And thank you again, Dr. Nicki.
Thank you.